No, you don't know. You're not told anything when you're an inmate.
No. So I'm in my unit, I'm laying in my bunk reading a book, and the guard says, "Get your jacket, go to the bus stop." Now, bus stop in the compound is just you're waiting outside the lieutenant's office.
Okay.
So I go there, and two guards come out. They say, "Come with me." I go down to intake, the receiving and intake, and they start, they took off my uniform with my name on it, put a different name. They shackled me and everything, and they put me in a van. I'm like, what's going on? They said, "You're having liver rejection. We're bringing you down to Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital in Boston." I said, "Oh, okay."
What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassity. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back. Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Folks, don't forget to do the follow, the subscribe, share this thing out, like it up, comment. It really helps the show, and I appreciate it. So who are we talking to today? Well, I have a guest on here that was he was a Wall Street trader. He's a transplant liver survivor, federal defendant, and a mitigation specialist consultant. So it's Joseph, and I said that I was probably going to get this wrong. De Gregorio, say it for me, Joseph.
It's De Gregorio.
De Gregorio. De Gregorio. I'll probably only say that once from now that we've gotten it out there. But it's got an interesting history of, he talks about that he spent 24 years on Wall Street as a trader. After the market crashed, he spiraled. By 2016-17, he was drinking heavily. And during that period, he began committing his crimes. In July of 2020, at the height of COVID in Manhattan, he received a life-saving liver transplant, despite not ever being on the transplant list. The moment changed everything for him. Just as he was leaving, as you would suspect, the hospital, the Securities and Exchange Commission called. As it all unraveled, he was charged with one count of securities fraud and one count of wire fraud. But interestingly, and this is one of the things I'm interested in talking to you about, his plea deal carried a 41 to 51 month guideline sentence. And he started tirelessly working on mitigation strategies that lots of times lawyers just don't know much about. And when the sentencing came down, the result was pretty extraordinary. He received only a year and a day, which was a 75% reduction. And even more, he served only 25% of that sentence before release. He is now the founder of JN Advisors, a full-service federal sentencing mitigation firm, helping out white-collar federal defendants and really being able to be the guy that's walk the walk, talk the talk, and helping those people out with the same type of mitigation strategies. So I can't wait to unpack all this with Joseph. Before we do, I want to recognize Autoplaza Direct, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots, looking for a car. Then you spend 4 or 5 hours at a dealership to buy a car. This is kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting a car. It's called Autoplaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you, negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and finance. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge, the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Autoplaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Folks, check out this book, Doctor Not Guilty, by exonerated psychiatrist, internist Muhammad Ali Rafai. It's the battle cry and blueprint for anyone misjudged by a system that should protect the innocent. The book takes you inside the investigation, the courtroom, and hard nights when faith and courage remain. You will meet the prosecutors and agents who failed, and the physicians, families, and patients who refused to surrender. This book reveals the truth about how power can distort justice and how resilience can truly set you free. Read it, share it, Join Dr. Refine, demanding accountability and restoring honor, dignity, and medicine and the rule of law. Joseph, welcome in, my man. How are you? How are you doing? And thank you for helping me out with your name.
Thank you kindly for the invitation.
So we were just talking before this, and I didn't realize once you had gotten sentenced in prison that you got sick from the liver transplant, which you and I shared. My dad went through some, not a liver transplant, but with sepsis. But Joseph, you went through a lot, and and you made it out on the other side, which is a lot of what this show is about. Can you take us back a little bit? Where did you grow up as little Joseph? What was life like? Mom, dad, siblings? Where did all that take place?
Sure, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, in Bensonhurst on 15th Avenue and 71st Street. Went to Catholic school, Our Lady of Guadalupe, right across the street from my house. The church was right across the street. And I played baseball growing up, collected baseball cards. You would find me getting the monthly Beckett price guide as soon as it comes out. So I would come home and price my baseball cards. And I saw the similarities when my dad was looking at the Sunday Times and he was looking at his Con Ed stock, and I was checking my cards next to him. And then he said, look, this is the same thing. You're looking at, how much your Don Mattingly went up this month. And, I'm looking at, so I always wanted to work in finance. And then
Like, how old would you have been when you thought you were looking at that? Like, how old of a kid? Because it's always interesting to me when somebody kind of just gets obsessed with the market, and sometimes it's at a really young age.
it started when I was 12, but then when it
Okay.
really kicked in midway through high school is seeing so many people buying their parents' houses, who worked on Wall Street, who's driving a Ferrari. And, you see all of this tangible that you can see that these people are doing it. And I went to work right after high school at a firm, cold called for a bunch of years. I was doing roofing and siding on the time. I was doing odds and ends with other things in construction. But then in 2000, I went to take my Series 7 and Series 63. I passed it, and then I had to rebuild a book from scratch, which I did. I started at US Securities and Futures on 100 Wall Street. They were the third biggest futures firm at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was in the office dialing two phones, making $600 a day from 7 a.m. to 10:30, and built it.
That teaches you a lot, doesn't it? Making cold calls.
It does. It does.
So
And
you didn't, you missed the whole college route, the
Mhm.
where everybody gets 4 years older and their life, and you're on Wall Street.
Yeah, I was the youngest to get the Series 7, and I passed it in 6 weeks, the Series 7, when other guys, it was taking them 6, 7 months. I'm good at studying, especially cramming. And went through the 2001, what happened at 9/11 down there, and then in 2003 when there was a lot of confidence taken out of the market with the Enron and the Ken Lays and the Kozlowskis from Tyco, and then we in 2007 I saw, because I always watch the credit and bond markets first, because that's what
Mhm.
predicates what's going to happen into the stock market. And I saw red flashes everywhere in 2007. But I had clients in Fannie Mae, which was AAA rated by Moody's to the end. It was a over 5% dividend. I had clients in Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, which was a 158-year-old institution. If you would have told
Right.
me that was going out of business, I wouldn't have believed you.
Right.
And sure enough, by August of 2008, all three of them did. I had just about a $50 million book that got decimated from September of '08 to March of '09.
What was that like? What I mean, when you talk about something like that, Joseph, um, you know, living through that, seeing the impossible happen with Lehman Brothers and people that are closing down, what was going through your mind?
It was surreal. The owner of the firm that I was working at the time on 40 Wall Street, he killed himself. And, I'm certainly wasn't, even that wasn't a thought. I was just worried about my clients. I was on the phone with all of them nonstop. I stayed at the office till 1:30 in the morning. But uh, mostly all my clients knew I didn't intentionally want to lose the money with all these companies. But there was a time like around Thanksgiving of 2008 where all these contingency lawyers started sending out notices to investors saying, "Hey, you lost money in the market. We'll take on your case. I'll get your money." So I had 3 arbitrations. And that was one for Lehman Brothers, one for Fannie Mae, and one for Bear Stearns. And so that was in 2009. I settled with all of them. I paid them all in full in 2011.
Okay.
And that's when I began to really drink.
Okay, so that's 2011. So that's, you basically walk into Wall Street around 2000, 2001, 2011. You have lived through the crash. Personally, are you married? Do you have kids? Like,
No.
where are you in that world?
Not married, didn't have kids. I oversaw 8 guys on the company trading floor, and I was managing my own clients' assets.
So you were just a guy that was grinding it out, making good money. And then 2011 happens. What's the next step?
It was really disheartening at that point when I settled with all of them. And uh, at that point, I was 35 years old.
Yeah, young guy.
I was born in 76. So um, I started, we would go out for dinner, us traders, and I would start to, drink a little more and a little more. And then by 2015, I didn't realize it because I was coming into the firm wearing a suit, functional. I was talking to people all day on the phone. It was not until my body started to show changes. I started becoming very yellowed. My legs blew up. My feet blew up to the point where I couldn't wear dress shoes anymore. I would get these tremendous pains in my stomach. And in 2016, I went to work at a private equity firm and I moved my business over there because they had all these IPOs. We had the Palantir IPO, pre-IPO actually, at $8, Airbnb, Lyft. So I said, let me get out of trading, the securities in and out all day and let me put them in these investments to let it sit there, grow in a couple of years. They'll all come public.
Mhm.
Um, but I was so past to the point, and I was lying to everyone. I was lying to everyone. And then I
When you say you were lying to everyone, you were lying about the drinking, or you're just lying. What
blind,
is that? What does that all mean?
yeah. So I was lying about the drinking. It came to the point where it was, you couldn't mask that at that point. And
Yeah.
what happened is I started to rationalize a crime in my head. I said, after Palantir went public and a lot of clients sold it in the 30s from $8, I, you know, uh, did what I did to 4 victims. I created 4 victims that I wake up with a pain in my stomach every day that it doesn't go away. What I did, they're always in the forefront of my mind. And, but I wasn't sober. I mean, I was far from sober in 2018 and in 2019. And it got to the point, Brent, where I didn't even want to go see doctors. And then
Well,
when
that's what I was going to ask you, Joseph. When you said that you started turning kind of a yellow color, you had bad circulation, your legs were swelling up. Did you go to the doctor? Did they diagnose you in some form or fashion of what was wrong with you? in that early stage?
They did. So I didn't want to go for blood tests. And when I went to go see one of my doctors, he forced me to go to the hospital to get blood. And when I went there, they wanted, to for me to get admitted and to go into this detox program. I told them I'm okay. And that was January of 2020. 3 months later, when the COVID protocols went in place in Manhattan and you couldn't go to a hospital unless it was COVID related, I got rushed to, in June of 2020, I got rushed to Columbia, New York Presbyterian Hospital.
And if anybody remembers, you know, basically March 17th of 2020, the world shut down. In that time period in June, the world was still shut down when you were getting rushed into basically the epicenter of all the bad stuff of COVID going on in New York.
What was going on with that hospital, we could have 4 episodes and we wouldn't cover it. And what I saw, and so they put 2 hoses on each side of my stomach when I got there, and it was just draining out buckets of bile. And they had me detoxing, and they said to me, in the first week of July, they said, you're going to need a liver transplant. Otherwise, you're not going to make it out of here. And I was like 10% cognate at the time. It got to the point where I drank myself into a coma. And what really caused that was after I did my crime, that's when the drinking got to the point where, because now I'm thinking, what I've done, look at what you're doing. And I was this complete Jekyll and Hyde. I was in the thralls of my alcoholism at that point. And then being in the hospital and hearing I need a liver, I was never on the list. And July 21st of 2020, we did the liver transplant. The liver they gave me had COVID in it. When I woke up in ICU, I was in a glass room, and they immediately started me with remdesivir, convalescent plasma treatments, high IV of steroids. I had 106.8 fever. It wasn't going away. The COVID wasn't stopping, so they had to put me on a ventilator.
Wow.
And I remember everyone around me in the ICU everyone was on ventilators, and all I saw, Brett, was white sheets being pulled over. And I said, I'm never going to make it out of here.
Right. Wow. I mean, I can't imagine. First of all, you had to have been really surprised that you got a liver, right? But to have a liver that had COVID, um, you get on the. How long were you on the ventilator?
The first time it was 10 days. And then as soon as I woke up from that, when I'm in this glass room in ICU, the nurses saw me. They come running in to pull everything out and then vacuum up my insides. Within 12 hours, I felt both of my lungs like an accordion just collapse.
Hmm.
And they put me on the ventilator again for 8 days. And they weren't expecting me to get up from that. And I did. And when I woke up, there was actually a priest in front of me, and I had septic shock, liver reject. My body rejected the liver right away. There was so many things going on. I didn't even know it at the time until I was discharged. Everything that happened to me when I saw my hospital records. So 5 years ago today, I was in ICU. So
Wow.
when I made it to the transplant floor, Columbia, in September of 2020, it was beautiful. It was, I was a few doors down from Bill Clinton's designated room. The nurses were so nice. It was just a completely, um, but still not all there. You're on so many medications. I had to learn how to walk again because I was laying in bed for 4 months straight, and the atrophy, I couldn't believe I couldn't walk. And then as soon as I got out of the hospital, and
But Joseph, the liver, your body eventually accepted the liver. Is that how this worked? Because
it did.
okay,
They stopped the rejection. That's why they kept me in ICU for a month and a half.
Wow. Okay, so your body finally accepts this liver. You go through what a lot of people died, sepsis, being on ventilator, COVID, the whole thing. You've made it all the way through. Now it's in September. This started back in June. Uh, what happens next?
When I get out of the hospital, I get a phone call, and it's Monsignor Jeff Conway of my church, who married me and my wife. My family's been going there for decades. And he says, Joe, I want you to come to the church rectory at 5 p.m. and have dinner with me on Thursday. And then we're going to go down to a 7 p.m. AA meeting. So I couldn't drive at that point. I still had my walker. So he says, when you can, or if you can have someone bring you here, which I did, and I would have dinner. Come to find out, I didn't know Monsignor Jeff was a big figurehead in New York City with AA. He's saved hundreds of lives, 43 years sober. I had no
Wow.
idea. And I had dinner with him and 2, 3 other long-term sobriety people, 36 years, 31 years. And then we would go downstairs for the meeting, go back upstairs. I would read the big book with Monsignor Jeff. And then I did my steps with him. And then within just a few months of going there, because now I'm out of the hospital and I'm sober for the first time in years, I said to him what I did. I said, Father, I got to talk to you. It was just me and him. After the meeting, we're upstairs. We read the big book. It was just me and him.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't believe what I've done. This is what I did to 4 clients. And Brent, within 2 days, I get a phone call after that night telling him, I get a phone call from the Securities and Exchange Commission wanting to speak with me. And they said, is this Joseph De Gregorio? I said, yes. They said, we'd like to speak with you. I said, would it be okay if I give you guys a call back in the next day or two? They said, sure. I took down his name and number. I felt relieved. And, but now I knew what I was going to go through, and I started becoming a student of the process very early on in my case. I went into Manhattan, hired my attorney, Nicholas Kaiser, tremendous lawyer. And I told him, I said, Nicholas, this is what I did. This is how I did it. I was the only one involved with my crime. I had no co-defendants. The firm that I was working for at the time, they had no idea what I did. There wasn't any cooperation agreement or anything like that. I told my lawyer, listen, I don't want to, call the SEC. Please call them and tell them that I want to fall on the sword. I own what I did. I don't want to give them the runaround. I've been waiting for this call. I have a second chance at life here. I'm on borrowed time. So my lawyer said, okay. That was May of 2021.
And you really did have to think after going through all that when you really probably weren't supposed to survive in any of these categories that would give you a whole new perspective on life, even though you were looking at the great unknown of dealing with the federal system.
But here's the thing, Brent, when the SEC called me, I said, you know what, Joe? There's people in ICU that they wish they have your problem. They wish they could go to prison for 4 or 5 years and just to be alive, just to make it out of there alive. No matter how crazy that may seem, to this day, every day I wake up and I think of being in ICU for 6 weeks, and I'm endlessly grateful. The pain never leaves the core in me of what I've done, how I destroyed lives. I created victims and broke trust. And these were long-term clients of mine. And so I started studying the federal system. The first thing I started doing was studying federal judges. And when I started reading about how to, not just to get leniency and mercy, but what the process was going to look like and what I was going to go through, I started hearing federal judges like Benita Pearson's. She said, I expect the defendant to take their case as a full-time job and to come into sentencing exhausted. That resonated with me early. Then I heard two big prominent federal judges. They said, we only take 10% into account what the lawyer says. We know they're paid mouthpieces for the defendant. It's what the defendant shows us. So I had to focus on what I had control over. So in the beginning, you think about prison, but then I said to myself, Joe, just look down, focus on every day, look at the immediate steps in front of you, maximize every day. So I got a job at Amazon, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. on a forklift, stowing pallets. My transplant team was not happy about that. I got a job at a golf course as a golf ranger, getting $15 an hour, 1965 at Amazon. I was doing a lot of volunteering in the evening, and then I'd come home 9:30, take a half hour to myself, and then 10 p.m. I'd get on the computer and I was just taking certifications, just taking course after course until 2 a.m. And I was documenting everything that I did. I bought my personal domain, because I wanted the judge to know as much about me as possible and not just what he or she would see on paper.
Mhm.
And a couple of weeks after that call, I'm sitting here. I called my lawyer. I said, Nicholas, I have things that I purchased with ill-gotten gains. They don't belong to me. I said, they belong to the victims. So he said, okay, bring it up to my office. So I said, okay, give me a couple of days. I'll gather everything. I'll bring it up. And everything and anything that I had, I brought up stacks of cash, stacks of $10,000 cash wrapped. I brought up silver kilo bars, all my gold coins, crypto and digital cold storage wallets. I mean, watches, jewelry. And I go up to my lawyer's office and we were up there for like 6-7 hours making a list of everything and an assessed valuation. And they had like this walk-in safe in a closet in the law firm. I said, what are you going to do with it? He said, I'm going to call, someone from the government. They'll come and pick it up. I said, okay. So that was June of 2021. I didn't get my
Okay.
plea deal until December of 21. So when I came forward in May of 2021 with the SEC, it took 7 months to refer it over to the DOJ as a criminal matter. And then I remember everything like yesterday now, December 27th, 2021, one count of securities fraud, one count of wire fraud. It was originally a level 25 point offense. They minus 3 points for acceptance of responsibility. So 22 points on the sentencing guideline charts was 41 to 51 months. I didn't disagree with anything in the plea deal. I signed it right away. They had it back first week in January, the U.S. Attorney of 2022. Then I pled guilty in March 1st of 2022. My case was out of the Eastern District of New York, which is in Brooklyn, Southern
Mhm.
Manhattan. And then March 30th is when I had my pre-sentence interview. And I was preparing for this even before I pled guilty. I started studying the importance of the pre-sentence interview, and I was on mine for about two.
Which, by the way, for those, listening down the Cayman Islands, the pre-sentencing report is the thing that follows you all the way through, you know, to your case manager and after when you get out. It's your document of who they say you are, and so many people don't have any idea, and a lot of attorneys don't really say, "Well, it's not a big deal. You just go down and interview." It is a huge deal. Pre-sentencing report. It's called PSR, PSI. It's a huge deal.
Absolutely. They call it our Bible in prison because
Yeah.
all they do is reference it. Every single stakeholder just references that. And then also the judge only has two documents at sentencing, the sentencing memorandum and the PSR. So when I was on my PSI and he went through his questions for the first 20 minutes, half hour, 2 days before that, I sent my lawyer a 3,500 word letter to the judge. And I wrote it from the heart. My heart literally pushed the pen. Brent, and I just kept writing until I stopped. And I emailed my lawyer, and I called my lawyer a couple of days before the PSI, March 28th. I called him. It was March 30th, my PSI of 2022. And I told him, Nicholas, can you please email that interviewing officer this letter that I wrote for the judge? I would really sincerely appreciate it if not only he can read it ahead of the interview, but if he could kindly fully attach it to the report that gets created from the interview. And he agreed. The probation officer, I thanked him. We started off, after he was done, I said, would it be okay if I speak? And I had all my talking points, already, always putting, the victims first, the acceptance of responsibility, the remorse, the humility, the shame, the lessons learned, your plan going forward, why you'll never be in another courtroom again. This is all very important to express during that interview. You have one bite at the apple. You're indirectly speaking to the judge. Everything I say becomes a matter of record. Then
Right.
the officer is going to give that recommendation to the judge. They're going to say, do you think he was really remorseful, or was it a performative remorseful? So it's a big deal. I viewed every part of me going through my case as a big deal. And, I had it in my head that I was looking at 41 to 51 years. I said, no, Joe, you're not looking at, 4 years. And that made me like, push the pedal, floor the gas pedal, do 160 miles an hour into sentencing, have no regret versus preparation. And I wanted to leave it all out there. And if I were to get 41 to 51 months, so be it. I did something, and I believe in justice. If people do something wrong in life, I believe, you should be held to account. I think that's one thing actually in this world is missing, is empathy and accountability right now. So then I was sentenced September 14th of 2022. And I was sentenced to a year and a day. And
Well, take me through that. How did you feel? Because when you walk in that room, you have no idea. You knew what the guidelines were. When the judge came down with that sentence, what in the world went through your mind?
well, when I was working on the sentencing memorandum with my lawyer, and I recommend anyone, don't leave that up to your lawyer. Be proactive. I was in the middle of everything with my lawyer. I was actually in the driver's seat and he was in shotgun. And I hired him on that basis. I said, listen, I'm going to be in control of my case, and I'm going to tell you things that I want done that it's going to be very unorthodox for you and you're not used to it. And that's why I hired Nicholas. He was all on board with incorporating all this stuff he really didn't know. And when I was doing my sentencing memorandum, we submitted it about 5 weeks before sentencing. And you, as a defendant, you get the right to read the government's sentencing memorandum that they submit. And it was a page and a half that they submitted to the judge. So when my lawyer sent it to me, he said, read it, call me back. I read it like 7, 8 times. I called him. I said, I don't know. This is the only sentencing memorandum and the only one I'm ever going to read. How is this? He says, well, the first thing is that it's only a page and a half long. They usually dump on the defendant for pages and pages and pages. He goes, so that's a good sign. He says they commend all your rehabilitation efforts, your turnaround, your acceptance of responsibility. Everything that I did, I incorporated this restitution framework into my case. I started paying restitution in January of 2022, 9 months before I was sentenced. And that was another thing that I called my lawyer one day, Brent, and I said, I told my lawyer, I said, listen, I'm going to be sending you like 400 or 500 a month, and earmark it for restitution. If you can, put it in escrow, earmark it for restitution. I said, and next time you're speaking to the U.S. attorney or whoever about my case, nonchalantly bring it up to them. Say, oh, by the way, my client, De Gregorio, he's paying restitution. He's not waiting before it's imposed at sentencing. He's paying now, and I'm holding it in-house in our account. So first, he said, just hold on to it. It's not going to make a difference. I said, no, listen, I said, the judge knows I'm making not even 4,000 a month working at Amazon, working at the golf course. If I could send in 10, 15% of that, it's certainly going to help me. It's not going to hurt me. So my lawyer said, okay. And then I brought another small check with me to sentencing. And I mean, I did a lot of other work too. I mean, I breezed by it a little too fast, but ultimately, I had a 7-figure restitution going into sentencing, no cooperation agreement, and I got a year and a day. And I started studying immediately. How do I get out of prison as quickly as possible? Right after that.
So you went in. What was the date that what was the date that you were supposed to go in?
So the sentencing was September 14th of 2022. I reported to Federal Medical Center Devens November 17th of 2022.
Okay, for a couple of months in between there, which is kind of like living in purgatory, waiting to see where you're going to go. Let's take a break there because I want to talk about how you handled prison and how you got through that because I know you also had some issues health wise. Before we do that, a lot of people don't like how they show up online. Many individuals think there's no hope when it comes to manage your reputation on Google. There is hope. It's called the Discoverability Company, and they can help you. Whether you're building your reputation from scratch, repairing your search results from a negative news story, Discoverability can also help you how you're portrayed on popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit discoverability.co, not .com, .co. They're even launching a do-it-yourself SEO option, a course for individuals who want to take on their search results on their own budget and speed. Listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off the DIY SEO course with coupon code Nightmare Success. And the Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you want to know more information, go to prisonus.org. That's prisonus.org. And it'll also give you information about the White Collar Conference on October 11th. So, Joseph, you make it through it all and voluntarily surrender to a medical facility, correct?
Correct.
So, walk us through that.
So walking in, going through intake, um, within the hour, they walked me into solitary confinement. And it was so FMC Devens is an administrative prison. It's, all levels of security. So it was actually one of the shoes or the solitaries that you see on TV. So when he walks me in, I asked him politely, I said, can you just give me the 2 biggest books you have? And
Smart.
he gave me Alexander Hamilton's biography, 748 pages, and he gave me Maximum Achievement. And he closed the door. It was not the cleanest. The shower wasn't working. I had to drink through the sink. I knew I was going to get sick.
Yeah.
And then I see that a day goes by, and they didn't open the door until Thanksgiving, November 24th. Not even for an hour a day. So 1 day passes, they didn't give me my medicine. 2 days passes, they don't give me my medicine. Now, the guards were sporadically walking around, sometimes 3-4 hours during the day, and I would catch them passing by, and the doors are so thick in solitary. I was banging on the door saying, hey, listen, I just self-surrendered. I had a liver transplant. Please, I just need my immunosuppressants and my anti-rejection meds. And the guard says, I'm not a doctor, and he walks
Mhm.
away. Next guard says, you should have thought of that before coming here.
Right.
And he walks away. And then it was at nighttime at the end of day 3 where this female guard, she heard what I said. She put her ear to the door and she goes, what? They didn't give me, are you kidding me? You have a liver transplant. They didn't give you your medicine. I said, no, man, please. and I just want my medicine. That's all. So they finally gave it to me. So then when they took me out of the shoe on
This is
Thanksgiving,
after day 3. Is that without your
we
medicine?
ended at the nighttime at day 3. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was already past 72 hours of, and I take it twice a day, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Right. And plus I'm drinking out of the sink. I got no immune system at all.
Mhm.
So, but again, this is something that I did. I put myself there. And, the first thing when they close the door and and you lay there, and solitude, you know, it's a good, you can make it a good thing or you can make it a bad thing. And I was just thinking about what I've done. I just kept thinking about my victims. I just kept thinking about what are my victims doing right now? The hurt that's in their body, the hurt that I hurt them, I broke their trust. And, you lay there and so then when they let me open the door at Thanksgiving, I go into general population and they started taking blood tests from me Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. And it was all abnormal labs. And, December 12th of 2022, I wasn't even there a month. They rushed me out of the prison, and they don't tell you what's going on.
No, you don't know. You're not told anything when you're an inmate.
No. So I'm in my unit, I'm laying in my bunk reading a book, and the guard says, "Get your jacket, go to the bus stop." Now, bus stop in the compound is just you're waiting outside the lieutenant's office.
Okay.
So I go there, and two guards come out. They say, "Come with me." I go down to intake, the receiving and intake, and they start, they took off my uniform with my name on it, put a different name. They shackled me and everything, and they put me in a van. I'm like, what's going on? They said, "You're having liver rejection. We're bringing you down to Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital in Boston." I said, "Oh, okay." And thank goodness. So I get there and, had two guards by my side in 24-hour shifts, 8 hours each, chained to the bed. I couldn't call anyone. No one, my wife had no idea where I was. I couldn't call her. She had no idea. I couldn't get in touch with anyone. And I got released December 29th. I wrote two huge pages in the nurses to the doctors. They saved my life. And, I wrote endless gratitude letters for them. The nurses and the doctors there at Beth Israel Deaconess in that transplant unit. So they drive me back. It was like 11 p.m. on December 29th in the middle of a blizzard. It was, it was, it was snowing every other day at Devon's in North.
I gotta tell you, Joseph, listening to that, being that sick, being in the hospital, being chained to the bed, more or less saving your life again, and then going back to prison. I can't imagine what a mind buzz that is to be walking through all that.
You really don't think of it. You're just going through it.
Yeah.
You're just going through it. And then when they get back to Devon's at 1 a.m, again, the snow that was coming down, and these guards were driving fast in the van in the snow. And so I remember telling them one time, can you guys slow down a little bit? They weren't happy with that.
No.
So they put me back in the shoe because I had a quarantine again because I was admitted
Okay.
to the outside hospital and they had the BOP had the protocols in place still.
Right.
So they walked me in and I was like, just please just give me my medicine. That's all that I ask. But just make sure, please. They're like, we're going to make sure, De Gregorio, we're going to make sure. December 29th, December 30th, New Year's Eve is when I first got my medicine.
Oh
Now,
my gosh.
I miss how many. And again, I'm banging on the door when guards are walking by. Can you please get me my medicine? You guys just sent me to Beth Israel Deaconess for rejection. please, I said, I'm a minimum security guy. I got a year and a day here. Just all I want is my medicine.
Mhm.
And it was all fell on deaf ears. And then I asked for the medical director, and the medical director came in my cell on New Year's Eve to take blood from me. And she gave me my medicine. And she says, I'm going to leave this with you. She left the bottles with me until January 5th, when we're going to get you out, and you got to stay in here a week. And you're going to, from the 29th to the 5th. Oh, here's your medicine. I said, thank you so much. Thank you. And so that's when not only myself, Brent, I saw so many people, the mistreatment. There were no doctors.
Yeah.
Okay, there was one doctor at Devon's, and he was there 3 days a week. The COs became nurses. I had acute kidney injury twice. I had to walk up to the compound from H unit where I was to the hospital wing. It's like a quarter-mile walk, and they had to give me IVs. They wanted to give
Mm.
me IVs in my wrist, right, like
Mm.
right here. So one of the guards who was playing nurse one night, he gave me the IV here, and I was like, sir, please, you got to hit an artery. I don't do it there. I've never gotten an IV there, sir. And he goes, listen, De Gregorio, you could take it or you got to go back to the hole. Which is it? So he pokes me, blood's shooting everywhere.
Oh
I
my
go, I
God.
go, sir, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Listen, I'm just going to go back to my unit. So he goes, go back to your unit. So, yeah, in fact, when I came home, Inspector Horowitz on YouTube did an unexpected visit at Devon's.
Really?
And yeah, it's on YouTube. And it was so ironic. That's one of the first things that I saw when I came home was the unexpected visit with the does over 2 dozen violations. They had floods everywhere. There was the mold everywhere. The vent lungs, it was called. But it was not even a veterinarian clinic, Brett. It really wasn't.
No, and yeah, I've you and I shared a little bit before we got on about my dad experience in 2015. What they did is they had he had a colonoscopy while he was in prison, and they perforated his colon that caused septic shock, and he kept saying, something's wrong, something's wrong. Well, it finally came down to where he collapsed and was more or less uh, not coherent, and I think there were 3 or 4 people that carried him up to where the CO station was and said, "This guy's dying." And that was when they finally, and then it was so bad that Marion Hospital couldn't take him, and so they took a helicopter, and he went to Barnes Hospital, was in a coma for a couple of weeks. He ended up surviving, but it's amazing what can happen in a situation like that when, something in prison. You just don't want anything medically to go wrong when you're an inmate, because anything and everything can go wrong when you're under that care. And you're just lucky, Joseph, that you know you were able to step by step survive. It's like you survived all these different things all the way through. It's amazing.
Well, again, I'm sorry to hear that nightmare you and your family and your dad endured, because I'm very passionate about healthcare and the BOP. I now know, and anyone that I consult that has health issues, I tell them, make sure you bring a medical release form, make
Yeah.
sure you bring your HIPAA form.
There's another thing that people aren't aware of unless you're in that situation. So I was also an inmate at Leavenworth, and I was on a visit with my wife, and the CO that was the visiting cop pulled me aside and he said, "Cassidy, can you come back here and speak with me?" And I'm thinking, well, this is behind the red line. Why is he allowing an inmate to go back here? And he said, "I just wanted to tell you that I have a friend of mine that's a CO at Marion, and your dad has been taken to Barnes Hospital, and they think and believe that he's in a coma." But inmates and families are not alerted to an inmate's situation unless there's a death, and a lot of people don't realize that. It's very primitive on how information is transfer, and I would never have known except for the CEO that took it upon himself to share that information with me.
Yeah, they don't let anyone know
No,
until the heart stops.
yeah. So when you how long were you in prison, Joseph?
So I surrendered November 17th of 2022, and I was released March 21st to home confinement.
Okay.
So when I surrendered, I had a blueprint, I had a reentry plan that I created, I was working on before I even got sentenced. And, around the 30-day mark, when you meet your case manager and you have that first team meeting, I brought it in with me. I sat down. She said what she had to say. And then I wanted to present this release plan to her because to me, it wasn't just a mere document. This was like a mindset that I embraced.
Or you'd plan it out.
Yeah. So I asked her, can you politely read this? I put a lot of work into this. I know how important it is to the BOP, but it's even more so important to me. Can you put this in my central file? And
Mhm.
she scanned it. And so she, scanned it, e-filed, electronic file. And I said, I'm going to grow this. So I'm going to write a book report after every book that I read. I'm going to do a monthly report card on myself with classes that I'm taking, what I'm learning in the classes, etc. And and I was handing in book reports and handing in the monthly report card. And there were many people sick in Devon's, even in the general population. The
How
ones
did you know, Joseph, to do that with the case manager?
with the release plan.
Meaning you're to make sure that she scanned that into your central file and
Yeah.
may to give yourself a book report and a status of a report card on you. Where did that knowledge come from
So I didn't know that she was going to e-scan it up and she was going to do that. I thought it was just going to go in like
in
w-
your file?
one of these
Yeah,
files. And
right.
so I said to her, I would like for you to, kindly just, put it in my file. And then when I went to her and said, listen, I'm eligible to go home. Can you please put me in? Or how does this work? Do you need anything from me? And so she says, yeah, I could start the paperwork. Um, so from the case manager approving your release, because we don't just get released from prison. I mean, you know how it is. The unit manager then approves it. The unit manager is the case manager's boss. Then it goes to the head lieutenant to make sure we didn't have any disciplinary infractions. Then it goes to the associate wardens. There may be 3 or 4 in each prison. They all individually have to sign off on it. Then the warden signs off, and it doesn't end there. Once the warden signs off, your file actually leaves the prison and it goes to the residential reentry management or the RRC. So where I live, it's in the Northeast. That Philadelphia Residential Reentry Center handles every male and female coming out of federal prison, and they do the home inspection, and they're the ones who issue our release dates. So it influences a lot of people. And then I gave it to my case manager at the halfway house, um, continued to build it, gave it to my probation officer when I started supervised release July 10th of 23. I still have 1 year left of supervised release. I'm on supervised release right now. And I email my probation officer every 90 days with what I've done. And the first thing I did when I came home was I started working with prison professors. And I started working with white collar advice. Well, when I started working with prison professors, I was consulting people going through the federal journey.
Mhm.
So people started having tremendous outcomes in their cases. It's all verified on the Trust Pilot reviews. But I'm very passionate about this. I take this very seriously. And everyone that I consulted, I take like it's my case. So then from there, I went to the lead consultant at White Collar Advice. And I started, so that was, you know, in September of 23. And then that's when I joined Columbia University Business School, Justice Through Code. Someone from Wall Street had knew someone who ran this program, and he said, it's all paid for, but you have to pass the onboarding process. I never coded before, so I went through that. I passed that. That led me to a lifetime subscription to Coursera that Columbia pays for, that I take full advantage of. That if you go to
Uh-huh.
my LinkedIn, Joseph De Gregorio, I have 80 plus licenses, specializations,
Yeah.
certifications, and it's actually all for mitigation. Every
Yeah.
single one that I took is for
Mitigation.
launching my company. Yes.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went into Defy Ventures this year in February. It was
Yeah.
a 17-week business entrepreneurial tech camp. And
I've heard good things about Defy Ventures too.
oh, they're
And
amazing.
yeah,
And they're
and Justin was on this show from White Collar Advice, but Defy Ventures, I've had 2 or 3 people that have been on this show that were either part of the program or worked after that with them. So they could, from what I understand, from what the people I've talked to, they do good work,
oh, they're
provide a real service.
I'm still in it. So
Yeah,
the first 17 week, we ended May 21st of this year, and it was pitch night. You had to pitch your company, and they had
yeah.
all these big, prominent tech names and volunteers. So my company came in first place. I won on pitch night, and then now I just finished the pre-accelerator, and now I'm starting the accelerator with Defy Ventures September 8th or the 9th. It starts, and that's five months.
It's kind of like Shark Tank, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh huh.
But in the meantime, I'm taking 3, 4 tests at a time on Coursera. Like on the top of my tabs now, I have 3, 4 classes exams that I'm taking. I think I must have took over a thousand exams, because each certification on Coursera is, I think there's like 10 tests within each one. But it's been great. I've been
Yeah.
passionate about AI, very passionate about, bringing something very different that no other company is doing in this space. And so it's next generation mitigation, what I'm doing.
Next generation mitigation. It's called JN Advisors.
No S, just advisor.
Advisor, JN Advisor. So, um, how long have you had that set up now?
I
Since you've
just
done all of
I
this?
just set up after I resigned from White Collar Advice in June.
Okay, so it's been 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. So I had
Wow, you've done an awful lot, Joseph. Since I mean, you did an awful lot while you were going through being, the federal investigation, the indictment, and all those different things that you had and prepared yourself for. Then you had the nightmarish experience of being someone that needed medical care while you were in prison, but you stuck with the fact of staying ahead of the game with your plan and doing the right things, getting it in the right hands to be able to get yourself out of there, and then continuing to educate yourself once you got out, uh, being an expert of what you are talking about because you've been through it all.
redemption's a lifelong commitment to me. There's 2 judges, one in the courtroom and the the
One
biggest one
upstairs.
upstairs. And I just wanted to do this the right way. I did wrong for that period of time. That it wasn't me. I listen, other people drink the way I did, and they didn't do what I did. It doesn't excuse me from crossing the line of breaking the law. I'm not saying that. Um,
No, you're lucky that you're alive. You've got 9 lives. And it's so how old are you now, Joseph?
49.
Okay, 49. So you're getting ready to drop over into that 50 category and join us.
Yes.
With everything that you've gone through, this this crazy life experience that you have, what do you think's your greatest takeaway?
I mean, I constantly, the victims are at the forefront of my mind, and it's in the core of me. And I try to turn that inside out and make it into the biggest positive, because I'm also on the governance committee for the formerly incarcerated college graduate network.
Yeah,
I
I
do.
had Pamela Wynn on here. Do you know Pamela? She was one of the founders of that early on,
Sure,
and
sure. Yeah.
she she's quite she has quite the story herself. Who she was pregnant and
Yes.
the whole story. But her episode was 3 or 4 episodes ago, and she's quite an inspiration. But I also had Tyler Foster on, that's in law school right now. It's a part of that. So I'm a big fan of that organization.
I was just on a Zoom with Tyler the other night.
He's a great guy. I just had barbecue with him when he was up in St. Louis doing
Oh,
some
wow.
intern work. Yeah, small world stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm also on the National Board of Advisors for the PD Green program out of Princeton, half hour from my house here.
That's great. Well, I've had them on too. It's a small world.
I have a lot of shows to catch up to.
Jeffrey Aberwitz was
Jeff
on.
Abramowitz, yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so your takeaway is that you want to give back and
Well,
give back from your experience.
the biggest thing is when people get, involved with an investigation, they just think they're going to hire the best lawyer and that's it. And the real battle is won outside of the courtroom. The prosecutor controls 80% of the courtroom,
Right.
and you have control over that 20%. And when you say yourself, the judge looks at the lawyer as a paid mouthpiece. What am I going to show? So I just wanted to create as many clusters of mitigation to overshadow the government's version of me, because they had this bolder version of me, and I just wanted to shine the correct light on who I was deeply inside. And you know um, deeply committed to AA. I do 3, 4 in-persons a week. I lead at meetings. I speak at meetings. I speak at a detox clinic once a month. Um, so yes, it's never gonna, I just want to, let people know that, like, you have control over the case. And if you think hiring a lawyer and just waiting to go into sentencing, you're not, it's not it that's not how it is. I mean, you have to really take control over things where people will say, how many. So I consulted over 300 clients in the last almost 2.5 years. Every single one of them, their lawyer said the PSI is just a 20-minute interview,
Right.
right? Another thing was that arose a lot was like, Joe, the loss amount. They would come to me and say, hey, the loss amount, it's not correct. That's why I just passed the forensic accounting and fraud. Because that's another big thing, because that makes the points go up, we're down tremendously. And then, there's a lot of different, mitigation that the lawyers just don't know. But also, like, the biggest thing was when this case, I had a few cases that was over 90% reduction in sentences. And one of them was facing 168 months and he got a year and a day. Another person, 126 months and got a year and a day. With that person, I worked with him for 18 months. He did everything that I did for my case. He implemented a restitution framework, nine months in advance, all these different things. But the PSR, when he was sentenced, the judge said that's the best pre-sentence report he's ever seen. And this was a judge on the bench for 32 years.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
Well, you know what it is, Brent, when they have the recidivism rate of 67% etched in the front of their mind, a judge,
Yeah.
a case manager in prison, your probation officer, case manager at the halfway house. So how am I going to make them know I'm part of the 33%? I'm never going to be in another courtroom again, but they don't know that. Just like when you go to prison, how am I going to separate myself from everyone and get out of here because we get looked at the same? And to me, in my opinion, the judge knows that we're human. We all make mistakes. No one's flawless. We're all flawed. And if you could story tell your story the right way to the judge, because it also goes into neurolinguistics about 22 times retention of a story more than just reading facts. That's scientific proof. So, yeah,
And I think the other thing too on that, I'm obviously a big fan of the storytelling, because we've had this show here for 4 years, but being able to tell your story and That's not only going to help you in front of your case manager or the judge, it's going to help you when you're looking for a job. It's going to help you socially if you can own your story instead of somebody else owning your story. Uh, it's a difference maker in how you enter the world uh, and make your opportunities after you get out. It's just a big deal. It's a really big deal. If people want to, Joseph, get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Go to www.jnadvisor.com. No S. You could find me on LinkedIn, Joseph De Gregorio, or you could call me directly, 646-588-8182. I'm a phone call away. I want to help as many people get the least amount of time as possible and be with their family.
I love it. That's a great passion to have, and you have the experience to help these people, which is fantastic. I want to thank Homestead Financial, Home Mortgage. Let me use this podcast room, all the fancy lights and cameras and everything. If anybody's got home mortgage needs out there, Greg Gaffney is your guy. He knows all that stuff. Check out my book if you're looking for one. Nightmare Success, Loyalty, The Trail, Life Behind Bars, Adapting, and Finally Breaking Free. Leave me a review on Apple. That's always a big help. If you want to know what I've got going on, BrentCassity.com. I spell it wrong. I spell it with a TY, not a DY. As I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. Joseph, I appreciate you being here as a guest. I think you gave people a lot of good information about how to take charge of your own case and not just sit back and wait. Be out in front, be aggressive, be your best advocate, and uh, good stuff. Good advice. Appreciate it.
Thank you kindly for having me.
Nightmare Success, in and out.